Please note, in order to comply with YouTube policy, this free version of the audiobook has bedroom scenes and curse words redacted. If you would like to read the full text, please get the ebook or print version of the story.
Chapter 1. Nick. What is it in my personality that makes me unable to say no to a pretty woman? All Charlotte does is beam a wide smile at me and flutter her long lush lashes, and suddenly I'm wearing a stuffy red suit, playing Santa Claus for a bunch of squirmy, smelly kids. The truly perplexing thing is, Charlotte isn't even available. She's madly in love with a huge dude whom I do not want to fight at all. Even knowing there is zero chance of bagging her, I become mesmerized by her beauty, and the next thing I know I am here, donning this ridiculous costume. I blame my brother Beau. He's the one who volunteered me for this, and I wasn't able to weasel my way out of it before Charlotte dazzled me into obeying her wishes. Rumor has it that she has this kind of power over many. She even convinced Beau and his wife Fiona to get an older dog. Their fancy, pristine, and magazine-worthy house on Geist Reservoir isn't set up for dogs or kids, but they adopted a black lab mix, Beau, and Fiona is about ready to pop with their first baby. So I guess it's happening, whether the house can withstand the messy influx or not. Charlotte is bustling around the banquet hall, working on finishing touches for her charity fundraiser. I'm not usually attentive to such things, but even I have to admit that the glimmering, twinkling lights and sparkling fake snow draping the room make the normally bland space look like a winter wonderland. When Charlotte brings me a bedraggled boxer in a red and green elf costume with jingle bells attached and tries to hand me the leash, I finally put my foot down with her. I don't really like dogs, I tell her, crossing my arms and refusing to accept the looped handle of his hunter green leash that she's holding out to me.
He's not a dog. He's Twinkle, your elf helper for the evening.
Turning to the animal, Charlotte pooches out her shiny lips and says,
"Aren't you, sweet boy?"
The dog angles his large brown eyes around so far that the white shows as he looks up at me, silently begging for help. I scrunch my face up at the ridiculous woman and splutter. Twinkle? What kind of a name is that for a manly beast like this?
It's just his name for tonight. You can change it after you take him home with you,
she assures me as she hands me the leash. Something about that blasted woman has me nodding my head in agreement with the ridiculous statement. She's already speed walking away when I realize she has mesmerized me again. She left the dog with me and insinuated that I'll be adopting him. Hey, I'm not keeping this dog. I am not a dog person. I yell after her, but she keeps right on walking as if she doesn't hear me. Shaking my head before turning to look down at the animal, I say sternly, "You can keep me company during this function, but I am not taking you home with me." The animal blinks solemnly up at me. "My apartment is too small for a big dog like you. You would hate it. Besides, I don't even know if my landlord would allow it." The dog's soulful eyes continue staring up at me, practically hypnotizing me. Suddenly realizing that I'm having a full-blown conversation with an animal, I look around to see if anyone has noticed. Thankfully, everyone is too busy to take note of my mental lapse. I walk out to the raised makeshift stage and take my seat on the tacky gold chair. The brown elf dog lies down at my feet. His presence is warm and reassuring as I look out at the seemingly never-ending sea of snot-nosed, high-strung kids and their weary parents. The first youngster reeks of ripe diaper, and it goes downhill from there. I'm ready to throttle Beau and Charlotte for roping me into this when the beautiful woman catches my eye. She is near the end of the line, holding hands with a freckle-faced little boy, and the sight of her absolutely knocks the wind out of me.
Chapter 2. Kelsey. The charity's Santa Claus looks to be handsome underneath that fuzzy red suit. Wow, how desperate am I when old Saint Nick starts looking good? I stare down at my feet as we wait in the long line, unwilling to even entertain the idea of a hot fling with Santa. That is the type of thing that could scar my sweet little boy for life, if he ever found out about it. Besides, I have officially sworn off men, and I'm serious about it. It's best for everyone if I remain single. I would love for Tyson to have a father figure in his life, but I'm too damaged to have a meaningful long-term relationship with a man. A one-night stand isn't a viable option either. Other than the initial 15 minutes of fun, it would likely make the loneliness in my chest ache even more, since it would only serve to remind me of that physical connection with another human that I'm missing out on. When we finally make our way to the front of the long, slow-moving line of drained parents and hyper children, Tyson smiles up at me with the adorable gap in his teeth on full display. Using his big boy voice, he announces,
"I'm going to talk to Santa alone this year, Mommy."
"Is that so?" I ask him, surprised by his sudden bout of bravery. He generally likes for me to be close by his side, due to the whole stranger danger belief that I have encouraged in moderation. He nods before pointing at the steps that lead up to the stage.
"You can wait here. I need to have some privacy with Santa."
Okay then, I smile down at him, proud that he is becoming independent and opinionated, even though this means I'll have to do some sleuthing to figure out what my little boy wants for Christmas. I make direct eye contact with the good-looking man on the stage, before quickly darting my gaze away. His eyes really are twinkling. Perhaps I do need to get redacted to release some of this pent-up sensual energy. Lusting after Santa feels wrong on so many levels. When it's finally Tyson's turn, he reminds me,
"Stay here, please."
I do as he requests, but strain my ears trying to hear their conversation. Santa uses a bellowing voice to welcome my son and ask him what he would like for Christmas, but Ty whispers his answer near the man's ear. Santa's surprised eyes lock onto mine as he listens to my child. The warm look the man gives me as my son tells him his secret wish makes me uncomfortable, so I stare down at the dog stretched out and snoozing on the man's black leather boots. When Ty finally leans back, Santa seems to be uncharacteristically at a loss for words. He had been making loud promises he couldn't keep to the kids, despite the wide-eyed glares many of the parents gave him. I'm surprised to hear the man bluster and fake cough before finally saying,
"Well, I don't know about that, young man. Don't you have anything else you would like?"
I can't imagine anything Ty could have asked for that this man, who would never see him again, wouldn't be willing to promise in order to move the line along. We are near the end, but he still has a few more kids to greet. It had been a long evening for me, and I'm not the one with strangers' kids climbing all over me. Even from the stair where Ty had asked me to wait, I can see the giant tears welling in my son's lower lids. I want to kick Santa in the shin for not making false promises to my son, like he had the other kids. I will find a way to get Ty what he wants, or at least get him something exciting enough to make him forget he didn't get exactly what he wished for.
Maybe a new bicycle, or the latest gaming system.
Santa tries, but Ty is shaking his head. The little boy's dejected expression nearly breaks my heart.
A puppy.
Santa asks, desperately searching for a bribe that will work. I grit my teeth together and my eyes bulge as I silently fume at the man, but he ignores me. Luckily for the health of the man's shins, my son doesn't take the bait. He merely shakes his head and says in a clear, firm voice,
"I've told you what I want. I've been good all year so that I could ask for this."
I'll see what I can do.
The man promises as Ty hops off his knee and runs back to me. I try to catch Santa's gaze, hoping he will mouth the words to me, so I'll know what Ty wants, but he purposely avoids looking at me. Deciding it's probably for the best not to talk to him anyway, I take my little boy's hand and lead him toward the exit. "Wouldn't it be smart to tell me what you want too?" I ask. At Tyson's wary look, I add, "Santa may need some assistance with your gift." Ty gives me an exasperated look before saying,
"Santa has lots of assistants, Mommy."
I smile over his adorable mispronunciation and ask, "Oh?"
"Yes, they're called elves."
He informs me, sounding a bit exasperated by my lack of North Pole knowledge. "Oh right," I say, nodding my head for added emphasis. Brightening with an idea, I say, "How about if we make some mugs of hot cocoa when we get home, and you can tell me all about your chat with Santa?"
"Yes, please, to the cocoa,"
he says excitedly, before adding,
"but my talk with Santa is a secret."
I let the frustrated noise emit from my throat. Ty ignores my huff and asks,
"Can we add little marshmallows to the hot chocolate and watch a Christmas movie?"
"Sounds like a plan," I say to him as I put my arm around his tiny shoulders, thinking that he may not tell me what they talked about, but I'll get him to give me hints until I can figure it out. We walk outside into the chilly air, excited to continue our fun evening, but my step falters when I discover our car's flat tire.
Chapter 3 Nick. I'm grumbling to myself as I leave the charity function, with the dog that should not be named Twinkle, nor be going home with me. Charlotte successfully evaded me when I was ready to leave, but if she thinks I'm keeping this dog, she really is crazy. I'll return him to a rescue first thing in the morning, but right now, I just want to get as far from this place and these bratty kids as possible. At least I'm back in my own comfy jeans and t-shirt, after changing out of the Santa costume and leaving it in the supply closet for Charlotte. Perhaps I should have left the dog there too, but it's not his fault that his caretaker is a pushy nutjob. When I see the woman and child staring down at a flat tire, I rub my fingers along the scruff on my jawline. A tuft of white fuzz left over from the fake beard comes off my face. Just seeing it makes me itch. I really just want to go home and shower off the rental suit fibers and kid grime, but it's not in my nature to ignore a damsel in distress. As I get closer to the stranded duo, I realize exactly who it is. Great, I mutter, knowing I can't possibly ignore this particular woman and child. The dog looks up at me as if trying to figure out what I'm saying, as he lopes along silently at my side. Need some assistance? I yell as soon as I'm close enough for them to hear. The woman jumps in surprise before turning. Her wary expression morphs into a smile when recognition dawns. The little boy blinks up at me with huge, surprised eyes before he asks in a bewildered voice,
Santa.
Panic surges through me as I look to the boy's mother for guidance. I didn't want to play Santa Claus, and I certainly don't want to be the reason a sweet little boy stops believing. The woman gives a small shake of her head, so I say, No, my name is Nick. The boy gives me a knowing grin before he says,
Like Saint Nick.
Just like it, I admit.
It's okay. I've known the truth about Santa Claus for a while now. Mommy likes to think of me as her little boy, so I pretend to still believe for her,
he tells me in an important voice. The woman gawks down at him, obviously surprised by his revelation.
I'm Tyson, and this is my mom,
the boy says. I grin down at him. Of all of the kids I talked to this evening, he is the one that's stuck in my mind. It isn't just because his mother has curves for days either. Although his drop-dead gorgeous mom doesn't hurt anything, it is obvious after just a short chat with the boy that he is special and very different from his peers. Hello, Tyson. I look up at the beautiful woman and add, Mom. She gives me a shy smile before sharing her name.
Kelsey.
Kelsey, I let the word fall quietly from my lips. The pretty name suits her perfectly. Tyson pulls my attention back by asking,
What's your dog's name?
Oh, he's not my dog, I say adamantly before adding, and his name is anything but Twinkle. The boy's button nose scrunches up in distaste as he says,
Twinkle. That's a terrible name for him.
I agree. What should we call him? The child thinks it over for a few seconds before squealing.
How about Copper?
I look down at the fawn-colored dog. His fur has a warm reddish tint to it that looks almost like a penny. Grinning down at the child, I say, That's perfect, which makes his face light up with pride. What do you think about that, Copper? I rub the dog's soft ears. He leans into my touch before plopping his butt down right next to my foot. Remembering, I add, It's only for tonight though. Because I'm taking him back to the rescue tomorrow. He's not my dog. The dog blinks up at me with adoring chocolate brown eyes, which prompts Kelsey to say,
He sure looks like your dog to me.
Yeah, Copper belongs with you.
Tyson weighs in. Needing to change the subject, I look down at the tire and ask, May I offer you a hand with this? Kelsey looks down at the pavement, making it obvious she isn't used to asking for or receiving help. Finally, she says,
That would be wonderful, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all, I assure her as I stoop down to have a look.
It's on there really tight. Me and Mom both tried to loosen that last silly lug nut, but it won't budge, and she canceled the roadside assistance because it was expensive, so we weren't sure what else to try.
Tyson fills me in. I smile down at the ground at his adorable speech. I'm sure he has shared more with me than Kelsey would have liked, but her obvious independent streak makes me want to help them even more. When I realize the lug nut is rusted into place, I turn to Tyson to say, I have some magic spray in my truck that will loosen this right up.
Really?
He stares up at me with wide, amazed eyes. Yep, I grin before handing him the leash and asking, do you think you can handle watching Copper while I go get it?
Yes, I'll take good care of him. Won't I, Mommy?
He looks to his mother for a reference. She nods her agreement as she says,
Absolutely.
I can't wipe the wide smile off my face as I go to retrieve my can of WD-40. I'm going to need to keep a close watch on my heart around these two charmers.
Chapter 4 Kelsey. Nick saves our evening. He quickly changes our tire and then offers to buy us pizza for dinner. As soon as I see Tyson's excited expression, I know there is no way I can decline Nick's invitation. This is a slippery slope we are heading down, so I need to be cautious and make sure no one gets hurt. I'm a bit wary to give Nick our home address, but something in my gut says that we can trust him. He shows up at our front door with a hot pepperoni and sausage pizza just a few minutes after we get home. Copper walks inside our small home and plops down beside the sofa like he belongs here. Seeming as comfortable as his dog, Nick heads to the kitchen. After washing his hands, he places a slice of pizza on one of the plates I have gotten out. He takes it to Tyson at the table, while I fill water glasses for each of us. Once we are all settled at the table with our food, Ty asks around a mouthful of pizza,
How'd you change that tire so fast? Do you work in a tire store, or something?
I would normally get on him about his manners, but he's too excited right now to worry about such trivial things as not speaking with food in his mouth. It's not like we have a man at our house every day, or ever.
Nope. Recently, I've been working at a fancy car dealership, but I used to work on a pit crew for an Indy 500 racing team. We learned how to change tires in under 10 seconds. I was the outside rear tire changer, which is the one who gets to help push the car out of the pit.
No way.
My son gives the man an awe-filled, astounded expression.
Yes way.
Nick answers with a proud smile.
I love watching car racing,
Ty reveals before placing his hands on an imaginary steering wheel and making squealing noises.
I like watching them too.
Nick tells him before adding,
But my older brother is an actual race car driver. He's the one I used to work for.
What's his name?
Beau Wallace.
Nick answers. I don't follow racing, but even I recognize that name. Ty's mouth falls open as he stares at the man.
Beau Wallace is your brother. No way.
At Nick's nod, Ty says reverently,
Beau Wallace is the best car racer in the world. What's it like to be his brother?
It's like coming in second place at everything all the time.
Nick answers solemnly, but Ty is too fired up to notice the serious answer.
Could you introduce me to him?
Ty asks with wide eyes. Tyson. This time I do reprimand my son's lack of manners.
It's okay.
Nick assures me before saying to the boy,
I'll see what I can do, if it's okay with your mother.
When his gaze darts to mine, I give him a nod. Meeting Beau Wallace would be a dream come true for my son, so if Nick is willing to make it happen, I won't put a stop to it. While Nick and I finish our pizza, Ty talks excitedly about going to the racetrack and meeting his favorite driver. His pizza only has a couple of bites taken out of it, but I don't say anything because he is clearly too excited to eat. As I get up to take our plates to the kitchen, Nick stands to put the remaining pizza in the fridge. It dawns on me then how nice it is to have someone here to help with the little things, but I remind myself not to get used to it.
Will you stay for a Christmas movie, Nick?
Ty asks. Oh, I doubt if Nick wants to watch one of our silly movies, I say automatically, but my gaze darts to the man to gauge his expression.
What are you watching?
Nick asks. Ty takes his hand to lead him over to the sofa as he says,
"We have a channel that shows Christmas movies every single night all month. Let's see what tonight's is."
Nick sits on the couch, and Ty snuggles right next to him. Rather than washing the dishes, I let them soak and join the boys in the living room just as Ty gets the television on and tuned to the proper station.
Christmas Vacation is on. This is a great one.
Nick weighs in. I'm already shaking my head. I haven't seen this movie in ages, but I remember it as being funny, with some scenes that are inappropriate for Ty's age. I don't know. That probably has some mature themes for us.
Oh, it will be fine. Our family watches this movie every year. I practically have it memorized.
Nick assures me as he settles further back on the couch, and Ty climbs onto his lap. Although I'm a bit annoyed by his presumption that he can decide what maturity level my son can handle, I decide not to play the heavy. Ty doesn't have any male influences in his life. Nick is only here for the evening, so I don't want to ruin this precious time for my son. Nick is great about distracting Ty at the perfect times during the movie, so that he misses any language or references that I would be uncomfortable with my son viewing. Soon, we are all cackling at the silly slapstick humor. When Clark goes on his super speedy sleigh ride, Ty laughs so hard that he almost can't catch his breath. His hilarity is contagious, and soon I have tears streaming down my cheeks from laughing. It's the first time I can remember us ever giggling so much. By the time the movie ends, Ty is leaning against Nick's chest and sound asleep. Although the boy has grown too much for me to carry him, the man easily scoops him up into his arms. I lead him into Ty's bedroom, and watch as Nick's broad shoulders work to place my son gently in his bed. There's no denying the man has a nice rear end. After shaking my head to clear the surge of lust that arises from watching that sweet display, I move forward to tuck my boy into bed and lean down to give him a light kiss goodnight. I turn out the lights and quietly close Ty's door behind us. When we get back out to the living room, Nick stands awkwardly as if he's uncertain what should happen next. Finally, he says,
I should probably go.
Agreeing, I say, yes, you probably should. Negating my words, I rush forward and crush my lips to his.
Chapter 5 Nick. Kelsey's kiss is all-consuming. My mind goes completely blank as our tongues tangle together. She's the most amazing woman I've ever met, and I don't ever want her to stop pressing her soft lips to mine. My fingers rake through her hair as we explore each other's mouths. When she finally pulls back, we are both out of breath. I want nothing more than to claim her as mine, but this situation demands more than I can offer. I know I should walk away, rather than risk hurting this marvelous woman and her adorable son. I'm not cut out for family life. I'm panting as I stare down into her lovely face. My palm cups her cheek as I search for reasons to stop the inevitable. I shouldn't stay. I need to take Copper home.
I didn't ask you to stay, and I thought Copper wasn't your dog,
she murmurs. I chuckle before saying, only for tonight. I'm not sure if I'm referring to staying here or the dog, but Kelsey doesn't ask me for answers. Instead, she tips up and presses her lips to mine once more. At this second kiss, I come undone. My last shred of self-control slips away as I press into her, craving more, needing all of her to be mine. Her lips are warm and pliable beneath mine. My hand slides down the long, smooth column of her neck. Her palm is resting lightly on my chest, creating a radiating aura of heat around my heart. When I smooth my hand down to redacted, she moans into my mouth. The murmur is filled with desire and is easily the hottest sound I've ever heard. It makes me desperate to touch her skin. I begin unbuttoning her silk blouse, but my large fingers struggle with the tiny buttons.
Just rip it open,
she whispers into my mouth. I groan after I yank the shirt apart, and the little buttons scatter on the floor. My hands slide up redacted as the shirt falls off her shoulders and lands with a whisper on the floor.
The
lustful sound emerges from deep in her throat. As my thumbs redacted, as if seeking more of my touch of their own accord. This woman's hot skin is like an addictive drug. I can't get enough of her, and for the first time, I don't want to distance myself. I want to give her all of me, including my heart. I kneel down on the thick carpet to redacted. When I redacted, she hisses in a breath. She reaches back to redacted. It's the sweetest, hottest gesture of trust and vulnerability that I can imagine.
Nick.
She breathes out my name as redacted. My palms move down her waist and redacted. As my hands make their way south over the curve of her hips, they redacted. She's standing redacted before me. I tip back on my heels to appreciate the phenomenal sight for a moment before reaching out to redacted. I blink up at her, astounded by her beauty. With my last coherent thought, I utter her son's name. Tyson. I'm not able to form a complete question, but she evidently understands my meaning because she quickly shakes her head and says,
He never comes out of his room once he conks out for the night.
At her reassurance that her son isn't going to come out and catch me redacted, I turn my head to the side and redacted. The leg she's standing on buckles, so I redacted. She holds onto the back of my head as I redacted. By the time I reach redacted, I look up and make eye contact with her as I redacted. She's gazing down at me through half-lidded eyes when she says,
Oh, Nick, yes.
I redacted. She uses her hands at the back of my neck to redacted. I redacted. She's still redacted when she breathes out the best words I've ever heard.
Take me to bed and make me yours, Nick. Chapter 6 Kelsey. Nick just gave me the most redacted of my entire life, and I sense that this is only the beginning. I may only have one night with him, but I intend to make the most of our time together. I generally don't do anything like this, so I need to make these memories with him last a lifetime. I'm redacted as he carries me to my bedroom. Normally that would make me incredibly self-conscious, but Nick holds me easily as if the extra baby weight that I never lost isn't an issue at all. The redacted gaze he rakes over my body makes his stormy eyes darken with desire. He pauses just inside the threshold of my room so I can push the door closed. When he gingerly sets me on my feet beside my bed, I reach out to pull his t-shirt over his head. Once his shirt is tossed aside, my palms quickly find his flat abs. Your body is perfect, I whisper as I reach out to touch his heated skin.
You're the perfect one,
he assures me. I know it isn't true, but the reverent way he utters the words almost makes me believe him. When I step forward to graze my lips along his redacted, he sucks in a breath and holds it for a long moment as I explore him. My hands find their way redacted. A sudden bout of nerves makes my hands fumble as I redacted, but once I redacted, all of my jitters immediately dissipate. His redacted, and I can't get enough of it. I redacted. He redacted and stares down at me with a half-lidded desirous gaze. I redacted, making him tighten his fingers in my hair near the nape of my neck. An incoherent moan emerges from deep in his throat when I redacted, which has me feeling like a tantalizing bombshell, for the first time in my entire life.
I want to be redacted.
He grunts out the naughty words. No one has ever talked dirty to me before. I'm surprised to find that I like it, immensely. After standing up, I move over to the bed as Nick retrieves a redacted from his jeans. He makes short work of redacted. I watch him, mesmerized, as his redacted when he takes the few steps to reach the bedside. I sense that he's staring down at me, so I keep my eyes locked onto redacted as I slowly and deliberately lick my lips. The groan emerges from deep in his throat right before he says,
Kelsey, you're redacted.
With the confidence of his hot words and seductive gaze spurring me on, I redacted.
Are you redacted?
He asks in a gravelly voice as he joins me on the bed. Redacted, I whisper huskily near his ear as he redacted. He leans back to redacted and looks deeply into my eyes as redacted. When he's redacted, he stills for an extended moment. Our gazes are locked together as we both savor the intense connection of redacted. I've never felt closer to another human, physically or emotionally. My strong feelings for him don't make sense after knowing him for such a short time, but this man is making my heart feel things I haven't felt since Brandon, Ty's father, was alive. When he finally begins redacted, The delectable redacted has us both redacted. I redacted. He redacted. An incoherent moan falls from my lips as redacted. I grab redacted.
Redacted.
He orders me. I redacted. I don't remember ever feeling so relaxed and satisfied, which is why I'm surprised when the first words out of my mouth after our life-affirming redacted are, "You should probably go."
Chapter 7 Nick. I am usually the one who tries to find an excuse to make a quick exit after redacted, but I have absolutely no inclination to do that this time. Being with Kelsey was easily one of the most exciting, enjoyable times of my life. The last thing I want to do right now is leave. I'm stunned when she tries to give me the old heave-ho. I'm still redacted as I blink down and try to convince myself that she didn't just ask me to leave. I can stay, I offer in a croaky voice, feeling oddly vulnerable and hoping that I don't sound too needy. Kelsey shakes her head before answering.
It's a surgery day tomorrow at the medical facility where I'm a nurse, so I'll need to wake up early. Besides, I don't want to confuse Ty by allowing him to see you here in the morning. It's probably best if you just go now.
I glance at the clock. It's barely after midnight. We have several hours before he will wake up. How about if we snuggle together and get some sleep? I'll make sure to be gone before he gets up. For some strange reason, I'm desperate to stay here with her. The thought of leaving right now makes my heart hammer uncomfortably in my chest. I want to spend every moment I possibly can with this wonderful woman and her adorable son, so the realization that she is pushing me away makes me want to cling even tighter to her. It dawns on me then that I may cause the women I have one-night stands with to experience this dreadful feeling. Those trysts are meaningless to me, but if their hearts are this invested, I'm doing them a disservice. I don't ever want to make anyone feel this devastated. Kelsey rolls away from me and stands up. I watch her redacted sway as she walks over to her closet to put on a silky robe. It's a shame to have that curvy body covered up, but she makes the short red robe look impossibly tantalizing. I want nothing more than to redacted. Come back to bed, I urge her with my arms open wide, confident that she won't be able to resist my invitation. She crosses her arms over her chest and glares down at me.
It's really best if you go, and we leave it at this.
I bolt upright, fully alert. My voice emerges as a half-shout. Leave it at this? Tears are welling in her eyes when she nods her head. Softening my tone, I say, Kels, you can't mean that. We are just getting started. It doesn't make sense to have happened this quickly, but I already know I want to be with you and Ty as a permanent part of your lives. Don't push me away. She walks over to retrieve my clothes from the floor. As she holds them out to me, I blink up at her and say something I never thought I would utter in this type of situation. Please. The word comes out as a plea. I hate the desperate sound of it, but I can't let things end this way. She and her son mean too much to me. It may be fast, but I know that I'm meant to be in their lives. The call to be their protector is so strong it's nearly overwhelming. You and Ty need a man of the house, and I want to be that man for you, I say as I reluctantly stand and begin pulling on my clothes. Kelsey lifts her chin stubbornly before snapping.
We are doing just fine without a big, strong man to take care of us.
That's not what I meant, I say, hating it that my words are coming out all wrong at such a crucial juncture. Walking closer to her, I reach out a hand to brush along her jawline as I say, You are doing an amazing job raising Ty. He is a smart, kind-hearted little fireball. Her expression softens at my compliment of her son. I don't want to take anything away from your little family. I only want to add to it. I promise her.
We barely know each other.
She reminds me. I know, I admit, before adding, but I don't want to even think about going back to my empty life without the two of you in it. It's like everything was in black and white before, but now it's in vivid, brilliant, full color. Her lips turn up slightly, but she's shaking her head as she says,
I can't.
I see the tears in her eyes and sense that she is torn and wavering, even though her words say otherwise. Feeling desperate, I say, Besides, I promised Ty that I would arrange for him to meet my brother. Meeting Beau would be a dream come true for him. He's so excited about it. We can't let him down like that. I can tell by her concerned expression that she forgot about our planned visit to the track. It's not the ideal way to continue my contact with them, but at this point, I'll grab whatever I can get. The outing will give me another opportunity to see them both and wiggle my way into a permanent place in their hearts.
You don't have to go with us, but if you would make the arrangements for him to meet Beau, we would appreciate it so much,
she finally says. I want to go with you, I say, unsure why she's so determined to let me off the hook when I want to be snagged.
You don't understand. I can't be with you,
she whispers so quietly, I have to strain my ears to hear her words. I shake my head at her. I understand more than you know, and yes, you can. Before I can say anything to convince her further, my phone begins jingling in the pocket of my jeans. I startle, unsure who would be calling me at this hour of the night. After glancing at the screen, I answer, Beau? Is everything okay? I listen to my brother's delighted voice as he half shouts into my ear. I smile wide at the pride and joy evident in his tone before saying, okay, I'll be right there. As soon as I hang up, I rush to lift Kelsey into my arms. She stiffens slightly, but I twirl her before announcing, Beau's wife Fiona is in labor. I'm going to be an uncle. My enthusiasm must be contagious because Kelsey giggles. When I set her back on her feet, she says,
We can figure this out later. Go meet your niece or nephew, Uncle Nick.
Loving her implication that we'll see each other again and the sound of my name with uncle in front of it, I give her a quick kiss on the cheek before heading out to her living room, hooking Copper to his leash, and jogging with the excited dog to my truck.
Chapter 8 Kelsey. Nick has tried several times to get me to go out with him again. Despite how much I want to accept, I have refused each time. Today is different though. He has arranged for us to watch Beau Wallace during a practice session at the track, and I don't have the heart to face Ty's devastated expression if I were to decline the invitation to meet his hero. Ty is practically bouncing with anticipation as we park at the Indy 500 track and make our way to the entrance. Nick has left our names with the security guard, so we are allowed to pass through the gate. I can't stop smiling as I watch my son absorb the unique sights, smells, and sounds of the track with wide, awe-filled eyes. His head sweeps from side to side as if he can't take it all in fast enough. Nick jogs toward us. He must have asked the security guard to alert him of our arrival. The dashing, sparkly-eyed smile he gives us as he approaches nearly makes my step falter. I had tried my best to forget how handsome he is. His wide smile falls as he draws near us. Staring down at Tyson with a concerned expression, he asks,
What happened to your eye, buddy?
Ty looks down at the ground as he mumbles,
I got punched at school.
Nick kneels down in front of my son, so he's at Ty's eye level. Nick's jaw twitches as if he is clenching his teeth together when he asks,
Who did this to you?
Ty's eyes fill with tears as he kicks at the ground and says,
It's no big deal.
Nick reaches out to lift his chin before saying,
It is a big deal. No one hurts you and gets away with it. Now, are you going to tell me what happened, or am I going to march down to that school and speak with your principal to find out?
While I appreciate that Nick seems so protective of my son, this is none of his concern. I tell him in a curt tone, I'm handling it. When Nick stands and stares at me, I'm surprised by the intensity in his gaze. It's obvious by his expression that he truly cares when he says,
If you need backup, I'm there. We can't let this kind of bullying continue.
It's impossibly touching that Nick would be willing to come help me confront the school administration and the other boys' parents about the incident. I'm not used to having anyone else to count on like that. It's always been just me and Ty, so that is what we have both grown used to. I'm not sure how to lean on anyone else, so I say, thank you, but that won't be necessary. Nick nods before turning his attention back down to Ty to say,
In the meantime, we need to teach this little guy how to stand up for himself.
I'm already shaking my head. I don't want him engaging in a fight.
He needs to be able to defend himself.
Nick says firmly as his spine stiffens. My brows cinch together as I glare at the presumptuous man. I don't appreciate him forcefully inserting himself into the situation and trying to tell me how to handle it. My pinched expression must get Nick's attention because he immediately explains.
I'd like to take him to some karate classes. It won't make him aggressive, but it will help him be able to handle himself in these types of confrontations.
Nick must sense my wavering on the topic because he continues.
I started taking martial arts classes when I was about his age, and it helped build my confidence, discipline, and focus. It's one of the best things my parents did for me growing up, and I've continued to regularly practice and study at my dojo into adulthood.
He gives me a wide smile before adding,
Plus, it's something that I was better at than Beau, which was a first.
Ty is blinking up at me with wide eyes.
Please, Mommy. I really want to learn how to do karate chops.
My little boy makes some air chops and kicks, emphasizing them with loud,
Ha!
sounds. Nick and I both chuckle at his enthusiasm before Nick leans near my ear to say,
It will also help burn off some excess energy.
That might be a good thing, I agree as I grin down at my little wild man.
Is that a yes?
Nick asks with almost as much enthusiasm gleaming in his gaze as Ty has in his. At my nod, Ty squeals and tightly hugs my waist. His gap-toothed smile beams up at me, giving me confidence that this is the right decision, even though it will mean seeing more of Nick. With that settled, Nick grins down at Ty to say,
Okay, bud. Are you ready to go meet Beau Wallace?
Yes, please?
Ty squeals. The two of them hold hands as they run toward the pit lane to meet Ty's hero. There's no denying how wonderful it is to see my son with a strong, caring father figure. I wish I could let it last, but I know I shouldn't.
Chapter 9 Nick. This is easily the best Christmas Eve of my life. Seeing the anticipation of Christmas through Tyson's eyes is better than anything I could have imagined. I have fully weaseled my way into their lives, even though I sense that Kelsey is still making feeble attempts to keep me at a distance.
You better get to bed, sweetheart, so Santa can deliver your presents,
Kelsey says to the child.
Ah,
Ty makes a half-hearted effort to stay up, before brightening with an idea.
can Copper sleep in my room tonight instead of out here?
The dog, who has quickly turned into an integral part of my life, lifts his head upon hearing his name. Kelsey's eyelashes flutter quickly as she absorbs the hidden meaning in the question. Copper and I spend almost every night here, but we always leave well before Ty gets up. Apparently, our ruse hasn't been fooling the intuitive little boy.
Yes, I suppose that's fine,
She finally answers in a squeaky voice. After we tuck Ty into bed, Kelsey makes the two of us hot cocoa with a dash of peppermint schnapps. She hooks a small candy cane onto the rim of each mug before joining me on the sofa and saying,
You really need to tell me what Ty requested for Christmas. What if I didn't get him the right thing?
That's between him and Santa, I tease her before adding. Besides, your kind-hearted little boy didn't ask for a toy or gadget like almost all of the other kids did. I have the feeling that Santa is taking care of his request. She gives me a perplexed look, so I decide it's time to fill her in. Tyson asked for Santa to lift the curse that makes everyone you love, except for him, die. All he wants for Christmas is for you to find a husband to share your life with. Tears are pooling in Kelsey's eyes at her son's thoughtful wish.
I had no idea he felt like he was missing out on so much by not having a father.
I shake my head. He didn't say a word about himself. His only concern is for you and your happiness.
He's such a loving, sweet little boy,
Kelsey murmurs quietly. He is, I agree before adding, because he has a wonderful, kind-hearted, and generous mother raising him. Reaching behind my back, I grab the small green velvet ring box. And if you'll have me, I'd like a permanent place in your family. I know it's quick, but I love you and Ty more than words can say, Kels. For the first time in my life, I want to be a real man with the responsibility of a family to care for. Please make me the happiest man alive by agreeing to become my wife.
Oh, Nick,
Kelsey has tears streaming down her face as she shakes her head.
I can't. I've already let this go too far because I don't want to let you go, but Ty is right. Everyone I love ends up dying. That's why I'm so overprotective of him, and why I've tried, rather unsuccessfully, to keep you at a distance. My parents and sister were killed when their car was crossing the train tracks on the way to my play in high school, and Brandon had a brain aneurysm not long after Ty was born.
She swipes the back of her hand across her face before saying,
I am cursed, but I didn't realize Ty knew about it. He's probably frightened half to death.
He's not scared for himself. He's worried about you, Kelsey. And you're not cursed. Marry me, and I'll prove it to you. I'm staring earnestly at her, hoping she'll take a leap of faith with me.
You don't know what's going to happen. You could die tomorrow.
Kelsey practically wails. You're right, I admit quietly before adding, but anyone could. We all just need to make the most of whatever time we have, and I want to spend every available moment with you and Ty. You two have stolen my heart. You are my entire world, Kels. What do you say? Shall we make Ty's Christmas wish come true? I hold the sparkling diamond ring out to her, hoping with every fiber of my being that she'll say yes. Kelsey's gaze travels between my eyes and the ring box several times before her face opens up into a wide smile. With a nod, she says the most glorious word ever uttered.
Yes?
I press my lips to hers, deliriously happy. We reluctantly break apart when we hear the tiny voice say,
Mommy.
Sweetheart, is everything okay?
Kelsey seems stunned that her little boy has made a reappearance after being tucked into bed for the night.
Yes, I'm fine.
He answers solemnly before adding,
But Copper was snoring and keeping me awake.
Ah yes, that silly dog can practically lift the roof off the house with his loud snoring. I weigh in, making Ty chuckle as the dog lies down in front of the fireplace with an exaggerated huff.
I'm actually glad you're up, sweetie, because Nick and I have some exciting news.
Kelsey tells Ty. I clear my throat before saying, yes, and I owe you an apology. Ty's huge eyes blink up at me as I continue. Since you've been acting as the man of the house for quite some time, I should have asked for your permission to marry your mom.
You and Mommy are getting married?
Ty asks. I nod, but the boy's expression doesn't give anything away. My hands are clammy as I await his verdict to our monumental news. He looks up at me and says in an important voice,
You have my permission to get married to her.
Tears are clogging my throat as I croak the words, thanks buddy. The three of us enjoy a family hug by the warm glow of the Christmas tree's twinkling lights just before Ty pulls back to ask excitedly,
Does this mean that Beau Wallace is going to be my uncle?
I try not to let the disappointment show on my face that this is what the boy is the most excited about as I say, yes, I suppose it does.
Do you think he'll let me call him Uncle Beau?
Ty asks, oblivious to how his words are cutting me to the quick. I bet he will. I force my lips to curve up into a smile. Ty tears off toward his room, yelling that he can't wait to tell his friends who his new uncle is. He slides to a stop at the threshold of the hallway to turn and say,
Merry Christmas, Mommy and Daddy.
Merry Christmas, sweet boy.
Kelsey murmurs with watery eyes before he races off for his room. I don't even try to hide the tear trailing down my cheek as I say, he called me Daddy. Kelsey nods before saying,
You've made all of our Christmas wishes come true, Saint Nick.
I grin at the silly name. Her tone turns husky as she says,
Now, slide that ring on my finger and show me some of your best Christmas magic. Epilogue, Kelsey. It's Carb Day, the final practice day at the Indy 500 track before this year's race. Nick's brother Beau has reserved an exclusive suite for his friends and family to watch the action. Ty is practically vibrating from the excitement of getting to miss school to be here. There's no denying I'm dazzled by the extravagant, elegant party, but I want Nick to know that his famous brother doesn't have anything over him in my book. After filling a small, gold-rimmed plate with delicious-looking food, I walk over to where Nick is holding his nephew Ryder and gazing out the large window that looks over the oval track. Since his arms are busy holding the baby, I lift a flaky crusted mini quiche to his mouth and say, Taste this. It's delicious.
Yum.
Nick nods after taking a bite. Once he swallows, he adds,
Only the best for Beau.
I sense the undercurrent of jealousy that simmers just beneath the surface whenever Beau's name arises. Tipping up near Nick's ear, I whisper, You are so much more than just Beau Wallace's brother. You are Nick Wallace, an amazing father to my son and the love of my life.
I'd kiss you so hard right now if there wasn't a baby between us, and so many people milling around.
He murmurs near my ear. Later, I whisper the promise before turning my attention back down to the track.
Nick,
The man's tone sounds surprised. He confirms that by continuing,
what are you doing here?
Hey, Adam. I could ask you the same question. Good to see you.
Nick pats the man's broad shoulder. Turning, Nick introduces me to the handsome man who is wearing smart-looking glasses.
Adam is an assistant at the karate dojo, where I've been taking Ty for his classes.
Ty comes running over to greet Adam with an excited high five before showing him some of his best high kicks. We all chuckle before I remind my son to use his indoor voice. Adam lightly tickles Ryder's chin and asks,
Are you a friend of Fiona and Beau's?
Beau's my brother.
Nick answers. Looking a bit taken aback, Adam says,
I guess I never heard your last name or put it together that you are related to Beau. I'm one of Fiona's friends from high school.
Understanding dawns on Nick's face before he says,
I had no idea that you were the Adam that Beau is always grumbling about Fiona being friends with.
Adam's expression turns a bit wary until Nick adds,
I like you even more now.
The two share a light-hearted chuckle before Adam says,
I guess it's a small world.
It definitely is in Indy.
Nick agrees before adding,
I'm glad you're here because I have an idea that I've been wanting to run by you.
Adam gives Nick his full attention, despite the revelry of the group as the fast-paced pit stop challenge begins on the track. Nick angles his body to include me in the conversation as he says,
I've always loved karate, and I feel like it helped turn me into the man I am today. Now that I've become a father figure to Ty, I see a need that isn't being met in the community.
Adam nods as he listens intently to Nick's plan.
With work schedules, it can be difficult for parents to juggle it all and figure out after-school care. As a single parent, Kelsey had to shuffle things around every day to make arrangements for Ty, and he ended up going somewhere different each day of the week. Even with me in the mix, it's still a challenge, because I work most afternoons and evenings. Parents need a steady, secure place for their kids to go after school, where they can have a snack, do homework, and burn off some excess energy.
Yes,
Adam says, obviously already interested in Nick's idea.
I've been selling luxury cars at a dealership for a while now. It's lucrative, but it isn't my passion. I'd like to start a business that offers a service to pick up kids after school and take them to a karate studio, where they'll be safe, cared for, and busy until their parents can pick them up. What do you think?
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Adam says immediately before adding,
Let's present a business plan to the owner of our dojo. If he doesn't like it, we can open our own studio.
Nick's expression looks relieved and thrilled that Adam is completely on board with his plan. The two begin talking excitedly about their ideas for the future, so I wander off to mingle a bit. When I hear a lovely young woman being referred to as the dog-whispering matchmaker, I approach her and say, You must be Charlotte.
Guilty.
She answers with a friendly smile. I introduce myself before complimenting her on what a wonderful job she did matching Nick with Copper. She gives me a knowing grin before saying humbly,
I just help animals find their people.
Before I can comment, all eyes turn to the entrance as Beau strolls into the room like a rock star. He walks straight to his wife Fiona and says,
Hello, beautiful. Have we met?
The amnesia jokes still aren't funny.
She tells him dryly, even though several people are chuckling at his dark humor. He beams down at her before tipping her back for a deep kiss. When the prolonged public kiss begins to stretch on for an uncomfortable amount of time, I turn my attention back to Charlotte just as Nick and Ty join us. You lost your baby, I tease him.
I handed him off to one of his many adoring fans.
Nick answers before giving Charlotte a warm smile. The woman uses the opportunity to say,
I was hoping I'd see you here. You did such a wonderful job as Santa Claus last year. I wanted to see if we can book you for this year's event.
Nick rubs his scruffy chin as he pretends to think it over. He grins at me and Ty before saying,
I suppose it did bring some wonderful gifts into my life last time.
Charlotte's eyes widen as she looks down at Ty. It's obvious that she hadn't thought about the implications of this conversation happening in front of him. She begins stammering awkwardly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think. I mean.
It's okay.
Ty assures her in a grown-up voice.
I've known the truth about Santa for a while now.
Oh, good.
The relief is obvious in Charlotte's voice and expression. Turning to look up at me and Nick, Ty says,
I'm glad to hear you're going to have a direct line to the big guy in red again this year, because he might need some extra time to work on my Christmas wish.
Really? I ask my son, super curious about what he's dreaming of. He nods vigorously before saying,
Yes. I'd like for him to bring me a little brother.
After thinking for a moment, he adds,
A little sister would be okay too, I guess. But I would rather have a little brother.
Nick and I lock eyes. We haven't yet discussed this, but I can tell by his gleeful expression that he is as excited about Ty's Christmas wish as I am. After I give Nick a quick, confirming nod, he lifts our little boy into his arms and says,
Okay, son, we will get to work on your special request right away.
Adam is lonely and seeking his perfect Eve. When the precise woman he has been dreaming of saunters into the library where he works and takes a bite from his apple, he nearly falls out of his chair. Is she too good to be true? Find out in his first time, Adam.